Welcome back to Quiz Rush! Can you name a food for each letter of the alphabet from A to Z? Before starting, subscribe to Quiz Rush for more quiz games. Let's go! Name a food that starts with the letter M. Muffin meatballs and moussaka. Name a food that starts with the letter A. Apple pie, avocado toast, and Alfredo pasta. Name a food that starts with the letter R. Ravioli, ramen, and risotto. Name a food that starts with the letter T. Tacos, tiramisu, and tempura. Name a food that starts with the letter F. Fried rice, French toast, and falafel. Name a food that starts with the letter K. Kebab, kimchi, and key lime pie. Name a food that starts with the letter P. Pizza, pancakes, and pudding. Name a food that starts with the letter C. Cheesecake, croissant, and curry. Name a food that starts with the letter H. Hamburger, hummus, and hot dog. Name a food that starts with the letter U. Udon, upside-down cake, and ugali. Name a food that starts with the letter B. Burger, burrito, and brownie. Name a food that starts with the letter W. Waffles, walnut brownie, and wrap sandwich. Name a food that starts with the letter D. Donut, dumpling, and dal. Name a food that starts with the letter L. Lasagna, lemon tart, and lentil soup. Name a food that starts with the letter G. Gnocchi, granola, and gumbo. Name a food that starts with the letter S. Sushi, spaghetti, and sandwich. Name a food that starts with the letter N. Nachos, noodles, and nuggets. Name a food that starts with the letter E. Enchilada, eclair, and egg salad. Name a food that starts with the letter J. Jambalaya, jelly donut, and jalapeno poppers. Name a food that starts with the letter V. Vanilla pudding, veggie burger, and vermicelli. Name a food that starts with the letter O. omelet, onion rings, and oatmeal cookies. Name a food that starts with the letter Y. Yogurt parfait, yam fries, and yellow curry. Name a food that starts with the letter Q. Quesadilla, quiche, and quinoa salad. Name a food that starts with the letter I. Ice cream, idly, and Italian sandwich. Name a food that starts with the letter Z. Ziti bake, zucchini bread, and zeppole. Name a food that starts with the letter X. Xiaolongbao, zakuti, and sigua salad. Name a food that starts with the letter G. Garlic bread, Greek salad, and gyoza. Name a food that starts with the letter T. Tortilla soup, tomato soup, and tteokbokki. Name a food that starts with the letter B. Bagel, baklava, and bibimbap. Name a food that starts with the letter Y. Yorkshire pudding, yuca chips, and yakisoba. Name a food that starts with the letter L. Lobster roll, lollipop chicken, and laksa. Name a food that starts with the letter O. Orange chicken, okonomiyaki, and olive tapenade. Name a food that starts with the letter R. Roast chicken, red velvet cake, and ratatouille. Name a food that starts with the letter H. Hash browns, hazelnut cake, and huevos rancheros. Name a food that starts with the letter Q. Queso dip, quail eggs, and quark cake. Name a food that starts with the letter D. Dosa, Danish pastry, and deviled eggs. Name a food that starts with the letter U. Uba halaya, uthapam, and unadon. Name a food that starts with the letter N. Nasi goreng, Nanaimo bars, and Nikoy salad. Name a food that starts with the letter C. Caesar salad, cannoli, and cupcake. Name a food that starts with the letter A. Acai bowl, asparagus soup, and almond croissant. Name a food that starts with the letter V. Vegetable curry, vichyssoise, and vanilla cupcake. Name a food that starts with the letter K. Katsu curry, kale chips, and knish. Name a food that starts with the letter E. Empanada, edamame, and English muffin. Name a food that starts with the letter Z. Zongzi, zabaglione, and zoodles. Name a food that starts with the letter S. Samosa, steak fries, and sorbet. Name a food that starts with the letter Irish stew, Israeli couscous, and Inari sushi. Name a food that starts with the letter M. Mac and cheese, mango sticky rice, and meatloaf. Name a food that starts with the letter P. Paella, pretzel, and pad thai. Name a food that starts with the letter W. Wonton soup, whoopie pie, and wheat noodles. Name a food that starts with the letter F. Frittata, fish tacos, and fruit salad. Name a food that starts with the letter J. Jam tart, jerk chicken, and jasmine rice. Name a food that starts with the letter X. Ex-Nipec salsa, xiaomian, and suizo pastry. Name a food that starts with the letter P. Popcorn, pecan pie, and pho. Name a food that starts with the letter E. Egusi soup, elo, and endive salad. Name a food that starts with the letter U. Urap, usul, and Ukrainian borscht. Name a food that starts with the letter G. Gazpacho, grilled cheese, and gulai. Name a food that starts with the letter L. Lemon bars, lo mein, and lamb chops. Name a food that starts with the letter T. Tuna salad, tres leches cake, and tagliatelle. Name a food that starts with the letter A. Apricot jam, artichoke dip, and arancini. Name a food that starts with the letter N. Nutella crepe, New York cheesecake, and Neapolitan pizza. Name a food that starts with the letter H. Honey chicken, halwa, and Hawaiian pizza. Name a food that starts with the letter C. Carbonara, ceviche, and chow mein. Name a food that starts with the letter V. Vindaloo, venison stew, and Victoria sponge. Name a food that starts with the letter O. oyakodon oyster stew, and Oreo cheesecake. Name a food that starts with the letter D. Durian cake, dirty rice, and dragon fruit salad. Name a food that starts with the letter M. Milkshake, margarita pizza, and mochi. Name a food that starts with the letter R. Rice pudding, Reuben sandwich, and roti canai. Name a food that starts with the letter W. White bread, Waldorf salad, and watermelon sorbet. Name a food that starts with the letter I. Indian curry, iceberg salad, and ikayaki. Name a food that starts with the letter B. Bolognese, bruschetta, and beignet. Name a food that starts with the letter S. Shawarma, spring rolls, and shepherd's pie. Name a food that starts with the letter F. Focaccia, funnel cake, and fried chicken. Name a food that starts with the letter K. Kung pao chicken, kheer, and kilbasa. Name a food that starts with the letter J. Jelly beans, Japanese curry, and jollof rice. Name a food that starts with the letter Z. Zarzuela, zarda rice, and zrasi. Name a food that starts with the letter C. Cornbread, churros, and calzone. Name a food that starts with the letter M. Miso soup, mashed potatoes, and molten lava cake. Name a food that starts with the letter U. Oob ice cream, urfa kebab, and urad dal. Name a food that starts with the letter F. Fajitas, filet mignon, and frozen yogurt. Name a food that starts with the letter Q. Quindem, kotab, and kotayef. Name a food that starts with the letter H. Hoisin noodles, hot pot, and hush puppies. Name a food that starts with the letter Y. Yakni soup, youtiao, and yakitori. Name a food that starts with the letter O. Orzo salad, ossobuco, and oliabolin. Name a food that starts with the letter L. Licorice candy, lychee jelly, and latkes. Name a food that starts with the letter T. Truffle fries, teriyaki chicken, and tapioca pudding. Name a food that starts with the letter A. Aloo gobi, arepa, and anchovy pizza. Name a food that starts with the letter X. Sigualao, Zoi Seo, and Sinshim chicken stew. Name a food that starts with the letter R. Ricotta toast, rainbow sherbet, and roast duck. Name a food that starts with the letter P. Pierogi, pumpkin soup, and pesto pasta. Name a food that starts with the letter V. Vegemite toast, veggie pizza, and Vienna sausage. Name a food that starts with the letter E. Eggs Benedict, Ethiopian injera, and egg tart. Name a food that starts with the letter N. Nougat, naan bread, and nigiri sushi. Name a food that starts with the letter D. Deep dish pizza, date bars, and dolma. Name a food that starts with the letter K. Korean corn dog, keto cookies, and kidney bean chili. Name a food that starts with the letter W. Wasabi peas, wedding soup, and wild rice pilaf. Name a food that starts with the letter G. Gingerbread, guacamole, and gelato. Name a food that starts with the letter I. Iced bun, imarti, and Italian wedding soup. Name a food that starts with the letter S. Sunday sweet and sour chicken and stuffed peppers. Name a food that starts with the letter B. Biryani, butter chicken, and banana bread. Name a food that starts with the letter J. Johnny Cakes, jicama salad, and Jerusalem artichoke soup.
How many did you get right? Drop your score in the comments, pick your next challenge, and subscribe to Quiz Rush for more quiz fun.